3 spine-chilling true neighbor horrors, sinister secrets revealed in a haunted community. Jessica lived in Maplewood, a suburb that sparkled with the charm of white picket fences and manicured lawns. But under the layer of contentment, something sinister lurked. The whispers began as a flicker at the edges of her consciousness, creeping into her senses after long, exhausting shifts at the diner. She often stayed late, serving greasy burgers and watered-down coffee, all to make ends meet for her 2 young kids. Alone, with her ex-husband gone, Jessica could not shake the feeling that something was amiss in her otherwise picturesque neighborhood. One fateful night, as she tucked her little ones into bed, her heart raced at the sound of muffled whispers. They echoed from outside her window, chilling in the quiet stillness. Was it just fatigue? Later, she would wish she'd taken those early signs seriously. As days turned into weeks, those whispers morphed into tangible fears. Joe, the cheerful neighbor who always seemed occupied with his flowers, began to cast his gaze in a way that made her skin prickle. Tammy, the seemingly benevolent PDA leader, had turned her kindness into an unsettling obsession, appearing unannounced at her door, the smile on her face never reaching her eyes. The tension built until it snapped one evening when Jessica found a child missing notice tacked to her door. The picture was of a girl who often played on the swings, her eyes bright and innocent. Stomach churning, Jessica felt the noose of fear tighten around her. It was like the perfect facade of Maplewood was crumbling to reveal a darkness that held a sinister grip on its residents. When she finally mustered the courage to report her concerns at the police station, the officers exchanged skeptical glances, dismissing her as just an overtired mom caught up in imaginary fears. She felt utterly alone, abandoned to confront the nightmares swirling in her mind without help. As another night fell, and the air thickened with something unexplainable, Jessica spotted a shadowy figure lingering at the edge of her driveway. Heart pounding, she squinted, recognizing Joe's silhouette, a man who once offered help but now seemed more like a threat. Panic consumed her in an instant. She grabbed her phone, keys clutched tightly, and bolted into the night, fleeing her home, the home she once felt safe in. The clean lines of the street now shifted, like a treacherous maze, as she raced past houses that had concealed their secrets too long. Suddenly, chilling laughter reverberated from behind her, forcing her to run faster. A sinister pact, an unholy alliance formed amongst her neighbors to protect their secret-riddled lives, now bore down on her like a ravenous predator. Jessica realized these once friendly faces had become twisted shadows. Could she even escape the very people who claimed to safeguard her and her children? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she staggered into the shadows, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were tracking her every move from the safety of their porches. They weren't just neighbors, they were watchful sentinels guarding a truth darker than the night. Racing heartbeat and shaky breaths fogging her mind, she stumbled through the gloom, desperately searching for anyone who might listen. A sinister whisper cut through the night air, "You were never meant to find out." The haunting words twisted her insides, her mouth dry, as every shadow she passed seemed to echo the dark intentions of the community she used to call home. What would she uncover next? Jessica darted into the cover of an oak tree, her breath shallow and quick. The whispers had grown louder, winding themselves around her like a serpent, squeezing the air from her lungs. She couldn't return home. There was no safety in familiarity anymore. Her heart raced, she felt each pulse like a drum announcing her presence to the shadows lurking in the dark. She peered out from behind the tree, scanning the street. The dim glow of porch lights scattered shadows across the lawns, but they felt more like prison bars than beacons of safety. They were eyes waiting, hungry and aware. Every rustle of leaves sent jolts of panic skittering through her. "Where are you?" A voice floated close, cutting through the still night. It was Tammy. Jessica froze, biting hard on her lip, trying to stifle the sob bubbling up inside her. The PTA leader was no longer the sweet neighbor who baked cookies and organized community picnics. Now, she was a haunting specter, aware and looking for her prey. Jessica, oh, Jessica, the sing-song tone crept into the night, echoing like a taunt. You've gone so far away from us. Please come back. Jessica focused on the underbrush. She needed to move. There, beneath an old hedge, a faint glimmer caught her eye. Was it her imagination? A tiny sliver of hope caught between the thorns? She pressed forward, crawling to the edge and peeking through the tangled roots. A cellar door lay exposed, a forgotten trap, just below the old house where the neighborhood kids supposedly dared each other to peek inside. Jessica. The voice sang again, this time closer, too close. Her heart raced dangerously. She glanced over her shoulder, breath hitching. Behind her stood Joe, his face twisted in a grin that was sickly sweet, a mask of false friendship. There you are. Why run when you can join us? Panic ignited within her. She bolted for the door, pulling at the rusty handle. It creaked in protest, a warning cry against her desperation. With every second, fear closed in tighter. She threw her shoulder against the door and it gave way, falling open to reveal darkness. She stepped inside and the scent of damp earth and mildew took hold of her senses. Inside, the darkness felt heavy and suffocating. Finding a sliver of light was nearly impossible, and she stumbled blindly, tearing her hands against cobwebs and rough brick walls. Just as she steadied herself, an echo of muffled voices rose from deeper in the cellar. Make sure she doesn't escape. We cannot afford another mistake. Was that Joe's voice? It sent shivers down her spine. She pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding painfully as she listened intently. She couldn't make out all the words, but fear wrapped tighter around her throat. There were others down there with him, she could tell, from somewhere deep within the dark, a low whisper sliced through the silence. She'll be one of us soon, just like the others. Despair clawed at her, and she began to sneak backward, trying to retrace her steps. But floorboards above creaked ominously, and a new round of laughter erupted above her. They knew where she was. Trapped. The thought settled like a stone in her gut. Jessica couldn't just survive, she had to fight back. Whatever vile secret this neighborhood held, she would expose it. But how? Just then, the door to the cellar slammed shut, echoing throughout the stagnant air, plunging her into darkness. She could hear them above, murmuring about her, plotting her fate. The shadows moaned, and Jessica clutched her phone tightly, her only source of potential light, knowing it was now or never, her resolve hardened. With a deep breath, she pressed the button. The screen flickered to life, illuminating the dusty cellar for a moment. She needed to find a way out. As her heartbeat echoed like thunder in the confined space, an idea sparked in her mind. But little did she know someone had already moved to seal her fate. What else had they hidden beneath the presentable veneer of Maplewood? The answer loomed just out of sight, waiting for her to uncover it. Would she find the truth in time, or was she about to become another silent whisper in the night? The flicker of Jessica's phone cast eerie shadows along the cellar walls, transforming cobwebs into writhing tendrils. Fear wrapped around her like a vice as she pressed the button again, heart racing, praying the light would guide her to an escape. Each step was a test. Her feet shuffled over splintered wood and cold stone, the decay whispering secrets that urged her to leave. But that laughter above it echoed like a death knell, sealing her fate. They were waiting, watching. She could sense it, the collective hunger of the neighborhood, a chilling chorus that grew louder as she found a small corner free of debris. She clutched her phone tightly, breath trembling as she rehearsed the details in her mind, the whispers, their demands, their twisted camaraderie held together by something dark and sinister. Where the hell was the exit? As she strained to hear, muffled whispers grew clearer. Someone had come downstairs. Heart pounding, she froze, willing herself to listen. The voices squabbled, an unsettling mix of urgency and delight, each word barbed and laden with malice. Make sure she doesn't see anything. One voice growled, recognizable as Tammy S. The last one, she almost ruined everything. Jessica's stomach dropped. What had happened to the last one? The walls felt like they were closing in. She strained to remember the story's missing pets, the odd houses sold quickly without explanation. Joe said it's ready. Another voice chimed in, dripping with excitement. Soon, we won't have to hide. We'll be whole again. Whole again? The phrase twisted in the air, and a heavy dread settled in her bones. What did they mean? Were they truly lost souls, seeking more than just a community bond, or was something more monstrous festering beneath the surface? Her breath became shallow as they quieted, the chat turning conspiratorial as footsteps approached. Jessica fought the urge to bolt, knowing they were scanning the dark for any sign of her, a hunted animal in a predator's den. The faintest rustle to her right sent a jolt of terror through her. Cold sweat trickled down the nape of her neck. She turned, ever so slowly, and pointed her phone toward the sound. Light caught a twisted figure, a face loomed, pale and gaunt, eyes hollow and hungry. Hello, newcomer, it hissed, voice chillingly sweet. We've been waiting for you. Cold terror consumed her. Was it another neighbor, or something more? Panic surged inside Jessica as she pushed herself back against the wall, frantically scanning her surroundings. She needed to move, but where? Then, in her moment of desperation, she found it tiny, almost like a crack in the wall, a vent. Could she fit through? Another sound above made her skin crawl. Laughter erupted in the cellar. Let the games begin. Someone shouted, slicing through the air like a knife. Time froze. Heart racing, Jessica dropped to her knees beside the vent, her hands trembling as she tested the edges. Dust and dirt fell away, revealing the possibility of freedom. No, she couldn't give in yet. What if the others were still trapped? What had become of them? With a quick decision, she dug her nails into the edges of the vent, prying it open just enough for her to slide through. The darkness enveloped her, but as she crawled deeper, voices above grew louder, crashing into each other. There was chaos in their banter, an urgency, like they were losing control. Get her out. She southed too close. Jessica wriggled her way through, every inch a struggle against the chilling fear that clawed at her mind. The darkness was suffocating. And just as she thought she was free, a hand shot out, grabbing her ankle in a vice-like grip. No more runaways. A voice snarled, a hiss that slithered into her ears. Jessica screamed, terror flooding her veins. In that moment, the urgency to escape morphed into something primal: fight or fight, survival or surrender. But deep down, she knew something the others didn't. Though they were hunting her, the hunt was mutual. What secrets had latched onto Maplewood's surface, ready to drag her deeper into despair? Would she expose the truth or become yet another whisper, lost in the treacherous shadows? The grip on her ankle tightened, sending electric spasms of fear through Jessica. She kicked, her foot connecting with something soft yet firm. A growl of frustration followed, and the hand jerked back, freeing her. Adrenaline flooded her, and she pushed herself harder against the tight walls of the vent, clawing at the darkness, trying desperately to pull herself through. Stop her! A voice shrieked above. The laughter from moments before turned into a frantic chorus. Jessica shoved her body forward, heart hammering in her chest. Every sound behind her felt like a countdown. The air was musty and thick, stinging her lungs as she crawled further into the vent. She was trapped in a long, narrow darkness, and the frantic whispers and shouts echoed like a death sentence. Panic rattled her throat, and she gasped for air, feeling the walls close in. She could visualize the pale, gaunt face that had greeted her, its hungry eyes peering into her very soul. "Where are you, little mouse?" A voice taunted from the depths of the cellar. Jessica could barely suppress a whimper as she crawled, pushing herself through the tight confines, each inch feeling like a small eternity. The voices above began to chant, a melodic dirge that sent chills slithering down her spine. "Don't let her go. She belongs with us." They sang an invitation and a threat wrapped in one. The sound of slithering movement filled the dark shaft, and Jessica felt her stomach clench in fear. Were they trying to squeeze into the vents, too? She couldn't think of that now, she had to move. When she reached the end of the vent, a small opening beckoned. Could it lead to freedom, or was it a snare ready to capture her? Dread clung to her as she peeked through the fissure. The room she saw was dimly lit, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Cobwebs lined the edges, a ghostly theater of forgotten grievances, waiting to be enacted. There were remnants of old furniture, discolored and decaying, a surreal glimpse into lives that had once thrived here. Yet it wasn't the furniture or the shadows that caught her attention, it was the large, circular symbols plastered on the walls, symbols she recognized. The stories she'd heard whispered in her own neighborhood echoed in her mind. Rituals. Calls to something ancient and dark. As she slithered through the narrow opening, she glimpsed a figure standing in the center of the room. It was tall and wreathed in shadows, the face obscured. Suddenly, the chanting halted, and silence fell upon them like a heavy shroud. The figure turned, the air shifted, and Jessica felt the weight of its gaze settle on her. "Ah, the brave one at last," it crooned, voice smooth and inviting, almost lulling her into complacency. "You've come to join the fun, haven't you?" Before she could think, Jessica bolted to her feet and sprinted toward a door in the far corner, her instinct overriding the creeping dread. "Catch her!" The voice screamed, snapping the stillness. The silence shattered, and the cheering laughter erupted once more, a cacophony of hungry souls marching toward their prey. Jessica shoved the door, praying it would open, heart hammering in her chest, desperate for an escape route. She heard footsteps gaining on her. The dark hallway stretched farther than it should have, an endless corridor filled with twists and turns that slithered into darkness, like a maze of despair. Suddenly, a hand gripped her shoulder, spinning her around. Jessica gasped, dread paralyzing her as she faced the figure once more, its face now illuminated by a dim light. "Don't you want to play?" It whispered, the words coiling around her heart like a serpent. Staring into those hollow eyes, Jessica felt her will to fight falter. What would happen to her if she lost this battle? "Join us," it urged, voice dripping with malice and anticipation. The laughter of the others echoed, and she stood at the precipice of her fate. Was surrender her only option now? As more figures emerged from the darkness, she realized the truth. This was not just a neighborhood, it was a twisted family, bound by blood and darkness, searching for their next sacrifice. What would she choose? Would she resist and risk everything, or give in to their seductive call? Time was running out. And the laughter grew louder. Jessica's breath quickened, her heart pounding in rhythm with the mounting chaos. The shadows pressed in around her, their laughter echoing against the walls, mingling with the whispers of regret that clung to the air. The figure before her loomed like a specter from a forgotten nightmare, its voice wrapping around her like a chilling embrace. "Why fight it?" it crooned, tilting its head, the shadows shifting to reveal a grotesque, grinning mouth. "You've come this far. It's pointless to resist." She tore her gaze away from its smile, the unholy glee written on its face striking deep into her core. Fear twisted her insides and pushed her into motion. Jessica's instincts screamed for her to flee. She could almost feel the cold fingers of despair wrap around her throat, squeezing tighter with each second she lingered. Using the last bit of strength she had, she broke free from the figure's grasp, stumbling backward. The laughter swelled, a wave washing over her as she darted into the depths of the twisted hallway, her mind racing through possibilities. She had to find an exit. The thought crashed against her like a wave. "Please, someone help me!" she screamed, her voice cracking, slipping into the void of darkness. But the mocking laughter only grew louder, drowning her shouts in a sea of malice. Every step echoed off the dank walls, a reminder of the purgatory she was trapped in. Behind her, the figures moved, shadows of dread that lunged and swayed, reaching for her with ravenous hunger. As she sprinted, her foot slipped on something wet, and she careened to the ground, her palms meeting the cold, hard floor. She looked up, dread pooling in her gut. The symbols painted on the walls seemed to vibrate, alive with a dark energy that whispered secrets of eternal damnation. Scrambling to her feet, Jessica raced forward, pushing deeper into the maze. With each curve and corner, she could feel their presence, their anticipation electrifying the air. This was a game to them, a hunt that sent shivers racing down her spine. They enjoyed her fear. "Keep running, little mouse." The voice taunted again, a sharp laugh slicing through her resolve. "It makes the catch all the more delightful." Ahead, a door flickered into view, half ajar, escaping beams of light teasing her like a beacon of hope. She lunged toward it, the frail wooden frame holding the promise of salvation. "Jessica." A familiar voice pierced through the cacophony, a tender call, rising like a distant star against the void. "Jessica, I'm here." It stopped her. That voice. It couldn't be. Her heart leaped against her ribs, a wild suggestion pushing her to change direction. But doubt clawed at her. Had they lured her into a trap, feeding off her desire for hope? "Don't listen to them." She screamed at herself, forcing her legs to keep moving. "Just go, just go." The laughter escalated, wrapping around her, the shadows growing more animated, a roiling mass behind her. It was a mockery of her desperation. She could feel the hot breath of her pursuers, unmistakable, just inches away, urging her forward but ready to devour her spirit the moment she faltered. She reached for the handle, rattling it, panic igniting once more as it wouldn't budge. The door wouldn't open. She was trapped here. A sharp pain lanced through her side as a dark shape brushed against her before vanishing in the near shadows. She gasped, adrenaline flooding her limbs as she prepared to push against the door again. "Join us," the voice hissed, sharp and seductive, bringing forth visions of twisted choices, fraying sanity, of becoming one with the darkness swirling around her. Then, the door creaked slightly, a crack appearing in the wood, the slivers of light forming a narrow line of hope. But would it lead to freedom, or to the depths of their insatiable hunger? With every ounce of power, she thrust her body against it, heart racing, prepared for the unknown. Just as it began to give way, a clawed hand shot out from the shadows, catching her left foot and pulling her backward. "Playtime is just beginning." Jessica gasped as her world twisted. She felt herself slipping away. Everything else faded, but then she glimpsed something, a glint of metallic shine just ahead, a forgotten knife glimmering in the light. Would she reach it in time? Would it be her salvation or her downfall? The darkness swallowed her scream as she tumbled backward, her thoughts spiraling into a chasm of terror. The grip on her ankle tightened as she was yanked back, panic soaring through her veins. She could taste the metallic tang of fear in her mouth, making it hard to breathe. Just inches away, the knife flashed tauntingly. With fierce determination, she clawed at the ground, each desperate movement a battle against the palpable dread around her. The shadows laughed, a cacophony of derision echoing through the corridor, feeding off her growing desperation. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest as adrenaline surged. She had to reach that knife, summoning every ounce of strength. She kicked back at the thing that held her, forcing it to loosen its grasp. For a fleeting moment, she felt free, her foot breaking loose from its clawed fingers. A surge of relief coursed through her, igniting a desperate sprint toward the knife. Fingers brushed against its cool handle, just within reach. She grabbed it, hefting the blade into her palm, feeling the weight of her potential defense. It felt heavy, but also like a single, fragile thread of hope in this swirling chaos. Before she could rise, tendrils of shadow swept closer, writhing like live snakes ready to constrict. Jessica spun, clutching the knife tightly, the light from the cracks flickering wildly, illuminating the grotesque figures now revealed in full. They swayed and twirled, their faces twisted with a mixture of sorrow and glee, a poetic horror that sent icy shivers racing down her spine. "Now you're armed." One of them sneered, its eyes glinting like polished coal in the dim light. "But it won't save you from the dance." She knew she had to act fast. Standing up unleashed a wave of sheer terror, but with the knife in hand, Jessica's defiance flared momentarily. In a panic, she lunged at the nearest shadow, the blade slicing through the air. It met nothing but darkness, yet the laughter faltered, a brief crack forming in their malice. "Foolish girl." The voice hissed, but doubt crept into its tone, forcing Jessica to feel a flicker of hope. "Back off." Jessica shouted, her voice steadier than she'd expected. "I'm not afraid of you." The shadows recoiled momentarily, their forms shifting and flickering in the dim light. It was the space she needed. She spun on her heel, darting down the corridor, knife clutched tight, eyes scanning for any openings. Each hurried step felt like it echoed, drawing the attention of the mocking figures behind her. The laughter resumed, more sinister, feeding off her escalating fear. But she pushed forward, drawing strength from the knife, the stubborn hope that flickered inside her like a dying ember refusing to fade. Up ahead, she spotted a window framed by stained glass, struggling against layers of grime. Desperation stole her breath. She could see it, the faint outline of the night sky beyond. Lungs burning, she raced toward it, each step an act of rebellion against the darkness closing in. When she reached the window, the hinges screamed as she shoved against it, splintering the wood further as the glass rattled ominously. She pressed her shoulder to it, willing it to budge and tasting freedom on her lips, but a sudden weight halted her. A shadow surged forth, tangible and clawed, gripping her shoulder tightly, drawing her back. "You think they'll let you escape?" It laughed darkly, the suffocating presence overpowering. The window would not yield, and Jessica's heart raced again. The knife trembled in her grip. She had to make a choice. Fight or flee? Escape might lie beyond the stained glass, but could she outrun what had already seized her? With a fierce resolve, she turned to face the specter, her voice breaking through every ounce of fear. "You don't own me." With that, she swung the knife, but as it sliced through the shadow everything froze. What happened next would change the course of her nightmare forever. Would it be enough to break the cycle, to sever the threads of darkness entwining her life? Or was this only the beginning of an even greater horror yet to unfold? The air crackled with a sudden stillness that felt heavy, like a shroud closing in on her. Jessica blinked, her heart pounding in her ears as the shadows wavered, caught in an unspoken standoff. The knife hung in midair, glinting ominously in the flickering light, but time refused to move. Then, just as suddenly, the shadows recoiled, like a wave pulling back from the shore. Jessica felt a tremor of dread as she realized how fragile this moment was. Was it a chance to escape or merely a pause to prolong her fate? In that agonizing silence, Jessica's thoughts raced. If she could hold on to this momentum, somehow breach the realm of darkness, perhaps she could destroy it. A sense of clarity cut through her panic. She could not waver, she would not become another soul lost to their twisted amusement. "Enough!" she shouted, volume rising as if trying to pierce the oppressive silence. "You have no hold on me." Instantly, the shadows writhed, coiling back together, their forms tightening. The tension around her twitched with menace, dark whispers sliding through the air like chilled fog. "Brave words for a wretched little girl," the voice mockingly echoed, distorting into a grotesque howl that sent chills dancing along her spine. "But no matter how hard you fight, we will always own the dark." Refusing to let fear seize her, Jessica brandished the knife. "I won't let you win," she shouted. With renewed defiance, she lunged at the nearest shadow, willing the blade to cut through its inky depths. But just as her knife seemed ready to pierce the darkness, a pulse of energy blasted outward, sending her staggering back. The shadows swarmed, enveloping her in a thick fog. They whispered, the sound curling around her like smoke, filling her senses with despair. "You think you can escape? We are everywhere you run." They hissed, the laughter rising above her, echoing off the damp walls, growing louder, more sinister. Each sound clawed at her sanity, twisting around the edges of her consciousness. With a Herculean effort, Jessica fought against the oppressive darkness, forcing herself to stay rooted. Fighting the urge to shut her eyes, she concentrated on the blade in her hand. It felt colder now, like it absorbed the fear from the air around her. Suddenly, a flash of light shot through, illuminating the corridor briefly, revealing grotesque faces basking in malevolence. Their wide grins twisted her stomach into knots. "This reality is ours," they taunted, swaying nearer, their forms blending into an undulating mass. Jessica gulped, grasping the knife tighter. If the shadows thrived on despair, maybe she could challenge their hold. She thought of every moment of fear, every terror she'd faced, and instead of letting it consume her, she fed it into the knife. "Your darkness cannot hold me," she screamed, her voice piercing through the cacophony of mockery. With a surge of will, she swung the knife again, the arc slicing through the air like a bolt of lightning. This time, the blade connected. A searing pain shot through the hissing shadows, and they twisted, groaning in protest. She could feel the shift. It wasn't just her imagination. Maybe this really could work. As they recoiled, a sudden jolt surrounded her, a fragment of light igniting the air. Before she could process it, the atmosphere shifted again, slamming her against the ground. All at once, the darkness dissipated into wisps, leaving her gasping for breath. The corridor lay silent, the laughter snuffed out, but the air buzzed with new energy, thick with uncertainty. Jessica pushed to her knees, breathless. "Did I win?" she whispered, looking around, half expecting the shadows to come crashing back in spite of her victory, but stillness clung to the air, cold but serene. Gathering her wits, she reached for the knife that felt warm against her palm now, a strange power coursing through it. Then she heard it, a soft, fragile voice lingering against her ear like a ghost. "This is only the beginning. Find the truth." Her heart raced again. What truth? The question echoed within her, a chilling reminder that in defiance, she might have unleashed something far worse. Jessica's eyes darted toward the distant end of the corridor as the atmosphere thickened once more. Shadows stirred, gathering at the edges, a reminder that the true battle had just begun. What lay ahead? Did she have the power to confront whatever had awakened? The deeper she ventured into the darkness, the more chilling the secrets would become. Jessica's breath came in shaky bursts as she pushed herself to her feet, pulse hammering in her ears. The shadows twitched like they were alive, creeping back with sinister intent. She gripped the knife, feeling the heat emanate from the blade course through her fingers. It pulsed with a life of its own, a weapon against the darkness, or perhaps a lure for it. "Find the truth," the voice echoed in her mind, sending a jolt of fear through her. She glanced about the corridor, searching for anything that could guide her. Time felt fractured, the air thickening with dread. Ahead, a doorway loomed. The faded wood was splintered, and darkness pooled beneath it. It beckoned her closer, the surface seeming to shimmer as if hiding something just beneath its skin. Jessica's mind raced, wondering what the truth could possibly be. Was there a way to end this nightmare? Or was she walking into another trap? The shadows coiled tighter, whispering malevolently, their scorn echoing in a chorus of phantoms. "You'll never escape. You'll never find it," they hissed, drawing nearer, dragging tendrils of cold air that wrapped around her ankles. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to move forward. Each step felt impossibly heavy, her heart waging war against the idea of retreat. The grip on the knife steadied her resolve, despite the dread pooling in her stomach. The moment she reached the door, the whispers crescendoed into frantic howls, mocking her courage. With a violent thrust, she shoved the door open, the creak echoing like a death knell in the oppressive silence behind her. The room beyond was dim, lit only by a flickering bulb that bathed the walls in an eerie yellow hue. Dust particles swirled in the light, revealing an old living space eerily preserved in time. Faded family photos hung crookedly, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow her every move. every nerve in her body screamed in warning. Something was off. Furniture sat covered with white sheets, as if the owners had abandoned their lives in a moment of pure terror. She could almost feel the shadows creeping behind her, waiting, hungry for her slip of faith. Determined, Jessica moved deeper into the room, her eyes scanning for anything that resembled a clue. A chest sat beneath a window, old and ornate, its hinges rusted. As she approached, the whispers surged, a tumult of wild anticipation thrumming against her. She reached out, a shiver rolling down her spine as her fingers brushed the surface. "Open it," they urged, voices dripping with eager malice. "It waits for you." With a deep breath, she swung the lid open. What she saw inside nearly shattered her. Papers, old and yellowed, scattered like leaves. Among them, a journal caught her eye, its cover cracked from age. As she reached for it, the shadows flared, retreating for the moment, but just as quickly gathering strength again. The moment she lifted the journal, the air around her crackled, thickening with a sense of foreboding. Jessica flipped it open, a key to this nightmare potentially unfolding within those pages. Her eyes skimmed the words, secrets of lost souls, tales of dark rituals long past, and then, a familiar name, her own. Jessica. The name echoed into her mind, colliding with her thoughts like a bullet. Suddenly, the shadows lunged once more, choking the air, a cacophony of anguished cries filling her ears, drowning out rationality. "You cannot know. You must not know." They shrieked. The walls trembled as Jessica clutched the journal, fear rooting her to the floor. The room spun, reality tearing at the seams. In that moment, she realized this was just the beginning, and the truth could be more terrifying than she had ever imagined. What had she stumbled into? What fate awaited her now? As shadows plunged toward her, fierce and ravenous, she felt the cold grip of dread wrap around her heart. "Get out!" A desperate voice shouted from within her, but the shadows were upon her, hungry for her light. Could she uncover the truth before it consumed her? Would she be doomed to join the very whispers that sought her destruction? The horror closed in like mist, swallowing her whole. The journal felt heavy in her hands, its pages whispering secrets with every intake of breath. The voices roared in her mind, a shrieking tempest, a frantic insistence that she drop it, cast it aside. But she wouldn't. Something deeper than fear compelled her to read further. Jessica, the journal seemed to beckon, urging her to turn the pages, to unlock the riddles woven within. Her fingers trembled as she skimmed through a passage. The ink was smudged, smeared as if blood had tainted the words. "The binding of souls," it read. "When the dusk falls, shadows arise," claiming their own terror rose like bile in her throat. She wasn't just a bystander in this macabre tale, she was intricately tied to it, a puppet on strings she couldn't see. The shadows lurked threateningly at the corners of her vision, swirling in anticipation, ready to feast on her fear. A sudden chill swept through the room. The dim light flickered violently, shadows elongating and twisting, revealing strange shapes as if the walls were alive, shifting to encapsulate her. "You shouldn't have come here," a whisper coiled around her, cold and slimy, drenching her in dread. "It's too late." Despair clawed at her as a new sadness settled in her heart. Had she always been destined for this? She had thought herself brave, now she felt like a moth drawn to a flame, oblivious to the impending destruction. She forced herself to read on. The journal spoke of rituals, sacrifices made generations ago in vain attempts to control that which was never meant to be harnessed. A name appeared over and over again, the Harbinger. The shadows tightened, and the cries intensified, echoing her growing unease. "Save them, save yourself," they implored, their tones wrapping around her like chains. Desire churned within her, a desperate need to escape, yet a compulsion to understand pushed her on. Suddenly, the ground beneath her quaked, and a figure materialized from the darkness. Tall and slender, it was shrouded in shadow, features obscured. It extended a skeletal hand as if offering or threatening. Jessica staggered back, and the journal nearly slipped from her grip. "Jessica," the figure murmured, voice dripping with malice and seduction. You alone can end this or bring it all to ruin. Panic surged, a relentless wave crashing against her resolve. With every ounce of strength, she screamed, "What do you want from me?" "Your truth, child," it answered, the shadows echoing its words, swirling like smoke around her. "Find it, and you shall be free, but beware, the path is littered with despair, and the truth is a merciless judge." The room spun, her perspective warped like a funhouse mirror. The journal pulsed in her hands, and the weight of forgotten history pressed heavily on her shoulders. She could feel the darkness crawling over her skin, tendrils of air tightening around her throat, squeezing. As cries intertwined with desperate laughter echoed in her ears, Jessica knew she faced more than mere shadows. It was a reckoning she could not escape. The truth she sought could very well shatter her, or set her free. Summoning every ounce of courage, she shouted, "Show me." The walls shuddered, shadows screaming in protest, and the journal exploded with pages flipping wildly. Each word illuminated a dark corner of her past, revealing layers of her identity, deep-seated fears, and connections she never fathomed, and then, she saw it, a vision of herself, intertwined with the shadows, caught in the web of despair. Could she break the cycle? Or would she succumb like all those before her? The vision overwhelmed her, a tidal wave of despair. She struggled to distinguish what was real and what was illusion. The room faded, and she felt herself being pulled into the dark depths. Would she find the strength to face whatever loomed ahead, or would she be lost forever in the shadows? What awaited her beyond the brink of darkness? As the shadows engulfed her, one thought lingered: was the truth worth the sacrifice? Jessica stood at the brink of despair, the shadows swirling around her like a living nightmare. The whispers grew louder, drowning her thoughts as the journal burned in her grip, its words fanning the flames of her fear. "You alone can end this or bring it all to ruin." The words echoed ominously in her mind as she struggled to maintain her footing against the surge of darkness. She glanced down. Tremors ran through her fingers. The knife, now jagged with energy, seemed to resonate against the grasp of shadows beneath her. "Jessica." The voice pierced through the chaos, a familiar sound laced with warmth. It chased the chills exploding in her veins, igniting a spark of connection. "Listen to your truth." She could feel it, the urgency. The shadows spun with fury, drawn to her self-awareness like moths to a flame. In that moment, Jessica steadied herself. Summoning the courage that had fueled her escape, she thrust the tip of the knife into the ground, anchoring herself against the darkness. "No!" she screamed, trying to drown out their taunts. "I will not be lost to you. I will find the truth." The darkness recoiled slightly, as if her defiance shocked it. Gritting her teeth, Jessica turned back to the journal, flipping its pages with renewed vigor, aligning her voice with the raw power pulsing through her. "Let me see." The room wavered, the shadows quaking with an almost sentient fear. She focused on a passage, where the words leapt out at her with undeniable clarity. "To confront the harbinger, you must seek the light within." In that instant, the shadows seemed to falter. A sudden calmness washed over her, a bright luminescence battling the dark. Memories flooded her mind, her children's laughter, her own hopeful moments, the carefree times before Maplewood turned into a haunting maze. With a fervent heartbeat, Jessica recalled the strength of connection, those she loved and what she stood for. "I remember," she shouted, realizing the truth was not in hiding but in embracing her light, her vulnerability. "You can't take that from me." Light erupted from the knife, blinding the shadows, illuminating each anguished face that once thrived on fear. The specters shrieked in horror as the radiant beam carved through their darkness, exposing their frail existence. Their form began to dissolve, threads of darkness weaving into the air like vapors. Jessica felt the room tremble, the balance shifting. The shadows fought fiercely against the light, their cries of desperation clawing at her. "Join us. We are your family. You belong here." "No!" she countered, defiance erupting from deep within her chest. "You're not my family. You're a deception." The shadows convulsed, boiling like liquid fear. The knife pulsed hot against her palm, an affirmation of her will. She launched into the heart of darkness, pushing forward with the blade. "Begone!" An explosive burst followed, scattering their form like ashes across the walls. Light poured into the depths, filtering away the haunted corners of her mind. The darkness howled as it shattered, desperation transforming to a faint echo, whispering of its impending fate. Breathless, Jessica stood amid the intense radiance, the journal dropping to her side, now idle and soft against the growing glow. The shadows dissolved into fine mist, the oppressive weight lifted, leaving behind a sense of serenity that coursed through her veins. "Freedom," a quiet voice echoed, and she turned to see a small shimmer of light emerging from the darkness, her children. They appeared ethereal, faces brightened with unadulterated love. "You did it, Mommy. You found the truth." Cold fear replaced by dawning relief, Jessica collapsed to her knees, tears spilling freely. "I missed you so much, I thought I lost you." In that embrace, old wounds began to fade, all the years of fear and loneliness peeling away like layers of paint. She felt them all around her, every memory reinforcing her resolve against the shadows that once thrived on her weakness. As the radiant light enveloped them, a doorway opened, an invitation to step back into Maplewood, reborn. The horrors of that night faded, leaving only the whisper of what nearly stole them away. Hand in hand, Jessica and her children stepped back into their neighborhood, the early morning light shimmering against the picket fences, illuminating the beauty that held beneath those once twisted facades. She felt a sense of purpose. She would make sure no one else fell prey to what she had faced. With strength radiating from every corner of her heart, she vowed to make things right. She would gather friends, expose the truths held within the shadows. Maplewood had transformed back, but it depended on her vigilance. She would be its guardian, their guardian. And as the sunlight broke, laughter filled the air, carrying away the last remnants of darkness that dared linger. "Let us make things better," she whispered, turning to her children, who smiled brightly. "Together." In the distance, an everlasting reminder of her struggle shimmered, but the power of love and light now stood unbroken, forever illuminating their path. Before you leave, here's what you need to do. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help this community grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Your thoughts matter. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting our journey together.